This conference will now be recorded.
All right, we're going to call to order the meeting for November 4th for the Board of Zoning Appeals, November 4th at 5 p.m. Maria, if I can have you call the roll, please.
Mr. Tucker.
Here.
Mr. Levine.
Here.
Mr. Osterhout.
Here.
Ms. Coolin. Here. Mr. Merrick.
Here. Okay, has everybody had the opportunity to review the minutes from the September 9th meeting? Move to approve. Thank you. Do we have a second? I'll second. We have a second. Can I have you call the roll, please?
All right. Mr. Tucker.
Yes.
Mr. Merrick.
I don't believe I was on board at that time, so
Abstain.
abstaining. Thank you.
Mr. Levine.
Yes.
Mr. Osterhout.
Yes.
Ms. Coolin. Yes.
All right, we have no old business, so before we get into new business, if you think you'll be speaking today and providing testimony, if I can have you raise your right hand. You don't need to stand, you can do it seated if you'd like to. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you very much. With that, we're going to go ahead and move towards the first piece of new business, which is a variance request for a rear building setback from 20 feet required to 12 feet provided for the property located at 5910 West Central Avenue, parcel number 78-34089, Sylvania Township zoning resolution, section 700A. Darryl, if I can have you read the staff report, please.
Sure. The subject property at 5910 West Central Avenue consists of 1.4 acre commercial lot on the northwest corner of Central and Pennsylvania Road. 3,375 square foot gas station convenience store is located on the eastern half of the parcel. The entire subject property is zoned C2 general commercial. Other C2 zone properties abut the subject parcel on all sides. Vacant commercial lot formerly the site of the big box retail store abuts to the north and west. A small commercial strip center featuring a mix of retail and food service businesses is to the east on the opposite side of Holland's Bay. And on the opposite side of Central to the south is a fast food restaurant and a vacant used car sales business. The existing gas station was constructed in 1988 and the subject parcel purchased by the applicant in 1989. In 2020, the applicant purchased 0.8 acres from the parcel abutting to the north and west and combined that with their current lot at the time effectively doubling the size of the subject property. With the intent of doing a complete demolition and redevelopment, the applicant submitted plans and application for the township's project plan review in 2021. They went through the entire review process, but did not finalize the plans or submit permit applications. Section 700A of the Sylvania Township zoning resolution dictates a minimum rear setback of 20 feet to principal buildings in the C2 zone district. The existing gas station is currently set back approximately 48 feet. However, this is mostly from the applicant's acquisition of additional property. Prior to 2020, the station was approximately 5 feet from the rear property line of the original parcel. At the time of construction in 1988, the rear setback requirement was 10 feet. No evidence of an approved variance has been found by the zoning department. The applicant has plans to demolish the existing building and redevelop the site for a new gas station / convenience store. The proposed new building would measure 4,813 square feet. Nearly 1,500 square feet, 42% larger than the existing building. The applicant is requesting an 8-foot variance to construct the principal building 12 feet from the rear property line. In the submitted variance application, the applicant states that the variance is, quote, necessary in order to maintain adequate vehicular circulation around the site for the fuel canopy and fuel tanks, and the approval of the variance will allow site dimensions that meet the owner's standards for safe tank circulation. The zoning department finds no hardship to warrant this variance request. The proposed plan submitted for project plan review in 2020 indicated the principal building, albeit smaller than the current proposed building, meeting all the required setbacks. This current proposed building is to be 4,813 square feet on a 60,255 square foot lot. Interestingly, two similarly sized proposed gas station convenience stores are presently going through the project plan review process. One at the southwest corner of Sylvania Avenue and Ford Road features 6,132 square foot building on a 71,264 square foot parcel, and another on the northeast corner of Sylvania and King Road presents a 4,343 square foot building on a 49,658 square foot lot. Each of these two proposed projects are meeting the township setback requirements and are not requesting any setback variances. Zoning staff recommends denial of the 8-foot variance request due to the rear setback requirement on a C2 general commercial parcel from 20 feet required to 12 feet provided for the property at 5910 West Central Avenue for the following reason. Staff finds no hardship, special circumstances, or exceptionalities to the property to warrant relief from the strict application of the requirements of the Sylvania Township zoning resolution. And the applicant's here this evening as well.
Thank you, Daryl. Does anyone have any questions for Daryl based on the staff report?
Daryl, have we received any public input?
We have one person that stopped in.
So no opinion, just wanted information. Okay. Any other questions for Daryl on this one? Looks like no. Would the applicant like to speak on this matter? If I could have you sign in, please, and then state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Woker. My address is 5721 Dragon Way, Suite 300, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45227. I'm a planner with McBride Deb Clarion representing Speedway 711, who's the owner of this property. Mr. Gauss has gone through the application. I do have a short presentation that I'd like to summarize. So some of the information I'm going to talk about, he's already presented, so bear with me. This is a slide that shows the existing property. It's an existing Speedway store. It's been operating there for more than 20 years, northwest corner of the site. As staff presented a few years ago, additional property was purchased around the site, so to the north and to the west, with the intent to redevelop the site. At that time, they consolidated the property, and now the parcel is approximately 1.4 acres. Prior to the consolidation, that purchase of the property, the Speedway store that was there, as indicated in the staff report, was about 5 feet from the rear property line. I also don't have any evidence of how that happened, but situation was that was less than the 20 feet for sure, and less than what was proposed at the time. We are in the C2 district, and as presented, we're asking for a variance to reduce the rear setback of the property. We are in the process of finalizing plans. This felt like a first step because we determined that this round of plans, we would need a variance. So our intent would be hopefully to get the approval from this board, and then we would proceed with the township site plan review process, coordination with the county engineer and so on. This plan would be, if I could go to the next slide. So this is the plan I submitted. This is a little jumbled. This shows the aerial over the site plan over the aerial. It kind of gives you an idea of where the plan is in relation to the site. A couple of things I want to point out just for the board's information. So we intend to demolish the existing store and pumps and dispenser islands and then build a new store. As was mentioned by staff, it would be 4,800 square feet. Then we would have a new fuel dispensers with a canopy in front of the new store. Our fuel tanks, if you're looking at that plan, would be in front. They're along the curb line there. And what you see on this plan, again, I know there's a lot of information here, but what you see is the fuel truck delivery route. So one of the important parts of this business, what Speedway 711 emphasizes, is fuel delivery and circulation. So what this plan shows would be a fuel truck entering from Central. The fuel delivery would happen over the tanks, and then they would exit on Sylvania. This plan also shows that we're going to keep the existing driveway on Holland Sylvania, so that driveway is basically in the same place. The driveway on Central will be closed and then moved approximately 110 feet to the west. So we're moving further away from the intersection, generally a positive from the traffic circulation. Both of these driveways act as right-in, right-out driveways because there's a median in both streets. So for all intents and purposes, these are right-in, right-out driveways, even though there's not, a triangle or, restriction on those driveways. If we go to the next slide, thank you, Darren, but making him do all the work. So this is a plan that we've put in relation to what I understand is the CarMax plan. So my understanding is that the owner of the property surrounding this site, the former Kmart site, would develop for a car dealership. And so I think this is relevant to the extent of what would be our neighbor, what would be joining us if approved. Obviously, they have the ability to change their plan in the future if they don't build what they've got approved. But as I understand it, this is what has been approved for the site. And what you see on this plan is that our rear of the building, as shown here, would be about 12 feet from our property line. And then we would be adjacent to a landscape strip on the CarMax site and then parking area. So there'd be either car display or service area. I'm not sure what their vehicle use there, but it would definitely be a vehicular parking area behind our store. If we go to the next slide. So this is a little bit of a cleaner version. And part of what I want to point out, we are going to use the existing signs that are on the property. So the sign on Holland Sylvania will be refaced in its current location. The sign on Central Avenue will also be refaced. Why does that matter? Well, the sign on Central, West Central, defines where our curb line is going to be. So in order to place our curb line without relocating that sign, that's the point at which we start our internal circulation. So this plan is showing that we will build our curb behind that existing full sign, and then that's right at where the fuel tanks are located too. So again, why is that important? I'm not able to pull my inside curb closer to West Central Avenue. I've got slightly more landscape strip there than is required by code, but that's not by choice. That's because of the location of that sign. So that kind of sets our first point of design for this. And I'd like to hand out a letter that I have from our engineering department.
Thank you.
And Derek, if we could go to the next slide, and then one more, I'm sorry. So this is, okay, before we go to that. So if you're standing on the street, this is what you see today, right? So it's pretty hard to see what the setback is. I mean, because the condition is what the condition is. We're a building adjacent to a big parking lot. In the future, we will be a building adjacent to a big parking lot, except there will be landscaping. So I mean, it'll be a little more defined, but at the end of the day, we're going to be similar situation, except the building will be moved slightly back, and again, we're adjacent to a big parking lot. So if you could go to one more slide. Thank you. So this is the letter. I know it's not easy to read on the screen, but what I've submitted in the application as our justification for the design is that 7-Eleven Speedway have design standards for how they lay this out. There's really 4 components, and I'll run through this real quickly. It starts with the front edge of that curve, right? And so that's why I pointed that out as a sign location. And their design standards have a 47-foot dimension from the front of that curve to the middle of the dispenser aisle. They've determined that that provides their customer circulation around where the fuel tank would be located. So if there's a scenario where there's a fuel tank doing its work, delivering fuel, and there's a customer exiting, there's adequate circulation to get around that truck and navigate safely through the site. So that's a 47-foot dimension. Then the second dimension goes from the same center of that dispenser island then to front of curb in front of the store where our bollards are located. So then in that situation, we've got a 62-foot dimension. And in this scenario, Derek, we'll go to the next slide. This kind of helps you see it a little bit better. So the first one was 47 feet. That's from the front of curb to the center of the dispenser island. The second is 62 feet, and that goes to the front of the curb where the bollards are. So that's where the pedestrians would be located. In this scenario, we would have parking in front of our store. So that 62-foot dimension allows for customers to pull in, back out of the stalls, pull out, circulate around the canopy dispenser island. And also have trucks coming through. So, I mean, it's about circulation and safety without having conditions that they feel would be unsafe. Two other dimensions then, they have 8-foot sidewalk. So that, again, provides adequate space for our customers to circulate between parking and the store, meets ADA standards, et cetera. And then the dimension of our store. So our store is 51 feet. So you start to add that up, and then I go back to the first point I made. We've got a condition where we can't move that sign because of the front curb line, and that really has set our rear yard. So what we're asking for is a reduction in the rear setback to be 12 feet instead of 20. That then would allow us to have the combination of circulation standards that I just went through, and I can go through them in more detail if you want, but I think they're not hard to understand when you look at these dimensions. And we feel that, failure to grant the variance would put us in a situation where we can't achieve the safety standards that we feel are important. I mentioned existing condition doesn't meet the setback. It's changed a little bit because of purchase property, but it's still relevant in my opinion. I would also like to point out two other things if we go to the next two slides. So there are conditions on the corridor. You know this community better than I do, but I was able to find two instances, one directly across the street, the Magic Walk. It's got a 10-foot setback. There's another, and that address is 5905 West Central. And if you go to the next slide, slightly down the street at the Chicago Post Cafe, that's got about a 12-foot setback to the property line. I feel that's relevant that we're not taking care of this corridor. This corridor has a variety of setbacks. It's developed over time, especially the commercial nature when you factor in what our neighbors will be and what the conditions will be, and the purpose of open yards are to create open space. And we're not going to create an environment that's going to be negative. That's what we're asking for. I don't think it's a difficult case to present. It's easy to understand what our application is for, and we feel that we won't be detrimental to the property values in the area, and that we're not going to change the character. And we request your approval of that variance. I'll try and answer questions if you have.
I have a question. Why can the sign not move?
So if we relocate that sign, we'd have to build a smaller sign, so we're trying to keep the existing sign as it is.
So you could move the sign.
We can't put the sign, we can't utilize the sign as it exists today.
Would you by chance know the history of, I think it was 2020 or 2021, where the landlord was going through this process of redoing this? Now we're looking at different dimensions here. I'm just kind of curious why the application, for lack of a better term, wasn't followed through back then, and why we're making the change request that we are this go around versus last time.
I can to some extent. I might not have all the answers.
That's fine. Just anything to help give me context.
The biggest context is that Speedway Corporation was purchased by 7-Eleven at that time. So plans that were in the works were shelved and put on hold. And then that was about that summer of '22. And then the purchase was completed after that. And it's taken about this long to kind of restart, reevaluate all of those projects. So, and not so relevant. I'm involved in about a dozen of those. And most of them have changed slightly because of building dimensions, new types of prototype designs that 7-Eleven is working with. So that's the situation that why that project didn't move forward. I can't explain or don't remember where they were other than that.
Sure.
I do know that CarMax, I think, was at that time too. They've kind of installed it as well. So I think they were our future neighbor back then. And seems to still be our future neighbor.
Okay. And then I have a question about the 7-Eleven standards from the engineering department. Are those standards, are those requirements of the franchise? Is this one of those things where 7-Eleven has leeway, or is this one of those things where every franchisee going forward has to meet what is written here in this letter?
Right. So two things. One, my understanding is this won't be a franchisee situation, which is a little bit abnormal for 7-Eleven. Not that that's the main.
Sure, but I get it.
My understanding is this, at least initially, will be a company owned and built store. There are scenarios where developers are building and lease back. Not so relevant here, but the answer is that these are the design standards that 7-Eleven believes are needed for their development. Any modifications from those standards would have to go to their management board and get relief from them to approve that. So as designed, they start with what is the standards. They space out those 42 set. I got my numbers wrong. They start with the 47, 62, and then I'm sure that there are locations that aren't built that way, but they also believe that those are substandard and prefer not to build that way for a good reason.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions?
I have a couple.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you still planning across the access easement to the north on the east side of the property? Does it show that?
We're showing that as a possible, right now that shows an actual landscape curve on it. So that is, we did not have the details of the CarMax at that time, so to be determined.
So your choice to not change the sign in any way probably prohibits you from asking for a variance for the front setback and that 15-foot parking setback and landscape buffer?
Can you restate that? I'm scratching that question.
Well, I see why you put the curb back, by the sign. I don't have a tool to measure this, but it looks like it's 8 feet from the setback, the curb, where the sign is. I mean, you could ask for a variance for the front yard setback too, but you chose not to because you don't want to interfere with the sign. Correct?
Correct. We chose not to move the existing sign. And if we had, an option would have been to put a curb around the sign.
Right.
And then the same result would have been for us having to have our minimal design standards from the closest edge of that. So we've got about a 2-foot gap between the end of the sign and the curb, and that's basically going to be bollards so that someone doesn't run into the sign.
Right. The sign wasn't there. You could move your curb to the south 4 or 5 feet where the sign sits, is my point.
A few feet.
Yeah. So have you asked CarMax if you could buy some more property?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
The old tanks are going to be removed.
That's That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, because the old tanks come pretty close to that sign. I mean, part of me wonders if the sign's going to come down in that process and they're just going to replace it. At least if these are the old tanks, these little gray ovals that are on the left side of the old site. Yeah, it looks like that's the old. Back to one of the first or second one.
I think another one yet.
It's one that had the aerial photo. I mean, they're awfully close. Maybe one.
I think the one before that's got a little bit more zoomed in, if my recollection.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I think I see there's existing, you can't even really see it on the screen. You can see it on the paper.
These are the existing tanks.
Yeah.
So, and this is where the sign is.
Yeah.
You know, this is.
Sounds like you're pretty close.
You're saying like this one is right.
Yeah.
The existing tanks are basically where the proposed canopy is going to be.
Mhm.
Right. And you know, that store, that's not the store we would build today. Interchange safety, lots of things in there, right? That's not a design we'll see people building. At the store level, but at the same time, you know, that doesn't meet our modern situation.
Are there other questions?
What is on the big plan, there is a sign, and then there is another sign that is called out kind of in the truck path. Is this not another sign? What is this? The second one? What is that one? So you have the sign here that we've been talking about. What is this one?
That's an existing sign, I believe, that's part of the Kmart property.
That's the old Kmart sign.
Oh, okay.
That's going away.
So, yeah.
So that's not there anymore?
Yeah, it's basically in this location, and it's not there.
Okay.
That's not feasible.
Carol, did our sign code change since they got this sign where they'd be reduced in square feet if they applied for a new sign?
I don't know what year they got their signs, probably 88, 89.
Originals in the store.
Yeah.
What's that?
Likely when it was built.
Original to the store in 88.
Guess I'm not understanding, but if I may ask a question. Why the need to keep those current signs as opposed to putting out new signs? I mean, other than expensive sign.
My understanding is that the existing sign exceed code, allowable code.
In height or in
I'm not sure. I don't want to misstate. I think it's an area, but I don't want to
we
misstate.
allow a 30-foot height and 100 square foot base. I'm not sure what those current ones are.
I'm sorry, I don't know that. You know, You know, I do a lot of these variances, obviously, and you get a lot of hearings. And, you know, I think it really comes down to the standard of what's the detrimental impact of approving this. And I understand that there are standards that the township has. And it's not just arbitrary, but I think at the end of the day, that you'll have a scenario where a convenience store will be adjacent to a open car lot and will be 12 feet, but it will look like we're 25 feet. And, you know, the result will be a circulation system in front where we think is more important. That, you know, the trade-off is that the township allows us to have the open space where we think it's important, and benefits our customers and the public in general, because we've got circulation issues that we're concerned about, in exchange for a reduction in rear yard that, in this particular situation, doesn't seem to have a negative impact by reducing it. Our dealership, our neighbor will have no impact by the decision of the variance if you should do that.
So I know we're talking about no negative impact, and that's fine. In the staff report, you heard basically our local standard is to show hardship. Can you walk us through what you or your client thinks is the hardship created by our current setback as it relates to this property?
Yeah, I think the best answer I can give Mr. Levine would be the presentation I made on the standards.
Okay.
That the denial of the variance would prevent us from applying what we believe to be safe circulation standards for our site.
Okay.
And that therefore creates the hardship.
Got it. Other questions for the applicant while we have them up here?
I don't think so.
I'm all set. All set.
Appreciate your time.
Of course, thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this matter today? Okay, seeing none. Would anybody like to go into deliberative session today?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. We're going to adjourn here at 5:31. We're going to head back. We'll be back after we have a chance to talk through this. We have the mic back on and we're still recording. Thank you. We're coming back into session at 5:45. With that said, I'm going to make a motion to approve a variance request for a rear building setback from 20 feet required to 12 feet provided for the property located at 5910 West Central Avenue, parcel number 78-34089, Sylvania Township Zoning Resolution, Section 700A. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second? Marie, if I can have you call the roll, please.
Okay, Mr. Schrecker,
No.
Mr. Levine,
No.
Mr. Absicott,
No.
Ms. Fuller,
No.
Ms. Mallon.
No.
With that, the motion is denied. You'll get something from our office in the next 30 days about this. I see we have no other new business, so I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Can I have you call the roll, please?
Okay, Mr. Schrecker,
Yes.
Mr. Mallon,
Yes.
Mr. Levine,
Yes.
Mr. Absicott,
Yes.
Ms. Fuller.
Yes.
We are adjourned at 5:46.